For 3 years, I was her contract muscle. Now, with $3 million in my pocket, I was supposed to walk away and never look back. I thought I was finally free, that the brilliant, glacial CEO and I would be strangers again. But when she stumbled back into my life, stripped of her power and utterly dependent on me, my heart, against all better judgment, began to thaw. I thought it was the beginning of our love story. I never suspected it was the final move in a game she'd been playing all along. When we met again, she was pregnant. "Ethan," she said, a ghost of a smile on her lips. "This time, there's no escape. This is your last month's salary and the final payment stipulated in your contract. $3 million total." Catherine Sterling's voice was as crisp and cold as a Siberian wind, utterly devoid of human warmth. She pushed a sleek, black metal card across the vast expanse of her desk. Her flawless, porcelain face might as well have had the word leave tattooed across the forehead. I didn't take the card. Instead, I threw myself at her desk, wrapping my arms and legs around one of the thick chrome legs like a desperate koala. "No, I won't go. Ms. Sterling, you can't do this to me. 3 years. You can't just tear up our history like it's a bad quarterly report." I sobbed, burying my face against the cold, smooth metal, my voice thick with theatrical despair. "Have you forgotten the time I took a knife for you? The time I jumped into the ocean for you?" A muscle twitched at the corner of Catherine's eye. "You took a knife for me because you weren't watching where you were going and walked directly into a mugger's path. He just wanted my purse. Your heroism escalated a simple robbery into attempted kidnapping." My wailing hitched for a second. "What about the time I jumped into the ocean? That night on the yacht. You said you wanted to see the sunrise, so I dove right in to catch you a starfish. How romantic was that?" I added, trying to defrost her frozen heart. "Romantic?" A flicker of emotion finally crossed her face. "It was murderous. That was because you got drunk and threw my diamond earring into the sea, thinking it was a wishing coin. You claimed you could get it back. And what was the result?" she asked, her gaze so sharp it could have cut glass. "The result was that not only did you fail to find the earring, but you got a cramp, and I had to call 3 lifeguards to drag your sorry ass back on board. You then clung to one of their legs, screaming that you were a mermaid. Embarrassed, I released the desk leg and, in a swift tactical change, latched onto her calf instead. The sensation was electric, the firm muscle toned beneath a whisper-thin layer of black silk. It was intoxicating. That's different. That was all proof of my love for you. I pressed my cheek against her leg, inhaling a fragrance that was both distant and deadly. "Ms. Sterling, I can't live without you. It's like a Scorsese movie without De Niro. It just doesn't work." Catherine's body went rigid. She tried to pull her leg away, but I held on for dear life. "Let go." Her voice dropped an octave. "Never. Not unless you promise not to fire me." She took a deep breath, the stunning curve of her chest rising and falling. I could feel the muscles in her leg tense with rage. "Ethan," she said my name. "I'm going to say this one last time. Our contract is terminated. Take the money and disappear from my world." Her hand moved toward a red button on her desk, the panic button wired directly to security. My heart hammered. If I was going out, I was going out with a bang. I snapped my head up and, through the thin veil of silk, pressed a firm kiss against her calf. Time froze. Catherine Sterling turned to stone. I could literally see the icy mask on her face crack, replaced by a spreading bloom of shocked crimson. Before she could finish, my other hand shot out, snatching the $3 million card from the desk and stuffing it into my pocket. I released her leg and launched myself backward like a sprinter off the blocks. "Ms. Sterling, it's been a pleasure. Let's never do this again. Thanks for everything." With that, I yanked open a heavy office door and bolted without a backward glance. Behind me, I heard a shriek of pure, unadulterated fury, laced with a tremor I'd never heard before. "Ethan Miller!" I ran like a man possessed. I burst out of the towering Sterling Enterprises skyscraper and into the blinding afternoon sun. Freedom. I spread my arms wide, greedily inhaling the sweet, exhaust-tinged air of liberation. The solid weight of the card in my pocket was the most reassuring feeling in the world. $3 million. 3 years of playing the fool, the buffoon, the human shield. It had all paid off. Catherine Sterling, the untouchable ice queen. She thought she was just buying a bodyguard, a prop, a tool she could use to play the part of her oafish, uncivilized boyfriend to ward off the endless parade of suitable bachelors. She had no idea I was the one playing her. Okay, most of the time, she was playing me. But I got my licks in. Like just now, I could still feel the phantom sensation on my lips, a ghost of expensive perfume and warm skin. I grinned. She must be absolutely livid. The woman was a notorious germaphobe who would flinch if someone so much as brushed against her coat. And I, her vulgar bodyguard, had just branded her. She was probably dousing her leg and rubbing alcohol as we spoke. My phone buzzed. It was a text from her assistant. Mr. Miller, Ms. Sterling has instructed me to inform you that in addition to the $3 million on the card, an extra $500,000 for emotional distress has been wired to your account. Also, Ms. Sterling hopes you get hit by a bus. Regards. I laughed out loud. See? She was so furious she was literally throwing money at me. Even her rage was expensive. Whistling, I hailed a cab. Take me to the most expensive condo building in the city. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror like I was a lottery winner who'd lost his mind. I didn't care. The joy of being rich is often beautifully simple. I spent the rest of the day buying a top-floor duplex in cash, the kind with a private rooftop garden and a plunge pool. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the river of traffic flowing through the city, I felt like the king of the world. No more icy glares from Catherine Sterling. No more playing the clown for her weird relatives and society friends. No more being on call 24/7 to deal with level crises. That night, I lay alone in a king-sized bed big enough for 5 people. The silence was deafening. There was no sound of Catherine typing furiously on her laptop late into the night. No soft murmurs when a nightmare crept into her sleep. No soul-destroying classical music alarm blaring at 6 a.m. sharp. I rolled over, and a strange feeling crept in. The room felt empty. My chest felt hollow. It's just an illusion, I told myself. New money blues. The existential dread of the suddenly wealthy. I just needed to fill my life with stuff. The next day, I went on a rampage. A sports car, a Swiss watch, a closet full of designer clothes. I draped myself in the scent of money. I went to the most exclusive clubs, surrounded by beautiful women. But their perfume was cheap and cloying. Their smiles were fake and hungry. And my mind kept stubbornly drifting back to Catherine's angry face. When she was angry, her eyes burned like supernovas. It was the most alive I'd ever seen her. I had to be losing my mind. I was actually starting to miss that woman. I slammed back a glass of whiskey. Get a grip, Miller. You're free. You're supposed to be happy. After a week, I was bored. A life of mindless spending was even more tedious than being a bodyguard. I parked the car in the garage, locked the watch in a drawer, and changed back into plain t-shirt and jeans. I needed to do something real, something that made me feel like I was still alive. I opened a bookstore. It was in a quiet corner of the West Village, far from the Midtown hustle. The name was simple, The Reading Hours. I designed every detail myself. Warm walnut shelves, soft leather armchairs, gentle, golden lighting. The air was a comforting mix of coffee and old paper. This was the life I wanted. I'd wake up whenever I wanted and wander over to the shop. I'd dust the shelves and water the plants on the windowsill. The few customers we had were mostly true book lovers. They'd camp out for an afternoon with a coffee and a novel. Sometimes we'd chat about an author or a plot twist. No agendas, no calculations. The feeling was peaceful. I thought my life would stay this way, quiet and undisturbed, forever, until one rainy night. The rain was coming down in sheets, a torrential downpour that seemed determined to wash the city away. I was about to lock up when the little bell over the door chimed. A drenched figure stumbled inside. Rainwater streamed from her hair and clothes, pooling on the hardwood floor. She lifted her head. The face, pale and bloodless, was unmistakably Catherine Sterling's. I froze. This wasn't the queen on her throne. The armor was gone, revealing someone fragile and lost. She was wearing a simple white dress, now soaked through and clinging to the elegant lines of her body. It was a heartbreaking kind of beautiful. Her eyes, no longer cold and distant, were filled with a terrifying emptiness, with confusion, and with fear. She looked like a lost animal. Ethan, she began, her voice a raw, broken whisper. I have nowhere else to go. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible fist. It hurt so much I could barely breathe. How could this have happened to her? The Catherine Sterling I knew was invincible. She was the woman who could hold up the sky if it fell. But the woman standing before me now was of the broken leaf in a storm. Get inside, I said, my own shock making my voice gruff. I stepped aside. As if that was the last of her strength, her body went limp and she fell toward me. I caught her on instinct. Her body was freezing, like a block of ice, and trembling uncontrollably. I could feel the tremors through her thin dress, a desperate vibration against my hands. A familiar, elegant scent filled my senses, but this time it was mixed with the cold of the rain and the bitter smell of despair. What the hell happened? I asked, guiding her to a sofa. She clung to my arm like a drowning woman clinging to a raft, refusing to let go. Her nails dug in my bicep, but I didn't feel the pain. My father, the company, it's all gone, she said in broken pieces, the tears finally breaking free. Fat, hot tears streamed down her pale cheeks and onto the back of my hand. I was completely stunned. Sterling Enterprises, a corporate empire, gone. It sounded less believable than the world ending. I grabbed a clean towel and gently started drying her long, soft hair. It felt like seaweed, slick with rain. I was careful, afraid I'd hurt her. She didn't resist, just leaned back into the sofa and let me like a soulless doll. I'd never seen her like this. The woman who could freeze me with a single glance was now as fragile as fine china. A strange emotion welled up inside me. Pity and a sharp, aching tenderness. Damn it all. I made her a cup of hot ginger tea. She held the mug in both hands, taking small sips, her vacant eyes fixed on the rain lashing against the window pane. I sat across from her, at a loss for words. Comfort felt cheap. Questions felt cruel. We sat in silence, the only sounds the drumming of the rain and her occasional, tiny sniffles. After she finished the tea, a little color returned to her cheeks, but her spirit was still absent. Thank you, she said, her voice low as she set the mug down. It was the first time I had ever heard those words from her. It felt rarer than winning the lottery. Don't mention it. I stood up to take the mug. You can stay here tonight. The bookstore had a small loft upstairs where I usually took naps. It had a bed and a small bathroom. It was simple, but it was a roof over her head. She nodded, not refusing. I let her upstairs. The loft was small but cozy. I pulled a fresh set of sheets and a duvet from the closet, along with a clean, unworn pajama set of mine. Take a hot shower, change into these. You don't want to catch a cold. I put the items on the bed. Call me if you need anything. I turned to leave, but a cold hand suddenly grabbed the hem of my shirt. I looked back. Catherine was standing behind me, looking up with wide, glistening eyes. In the warm light of the lamp, they looked like they were covered in mist. Her long lashes were still beaded with tears. Can you not leave me alone? She asked, her voice a fragile plea. I'm scared. I'll admit it. In that moment, my heart shattered. There was no defense against this version of Catherine Sterling. I pulled up a chair and sat by the bed. She wanted to take a shower. I could hear the steady rush of water. My mind was a chaotic mess. What happened to her family? What about Trevor Van Aster, her so-called perfect, blue-blooded fiancé? Where was he when she needed him most? 1,000 questions swirled in my head. The water shut off. A few moments later, the bathroom door opened. Catherine emerged, wearing my large white t-shirt. The hem fell just to the top of her thighs, revealing two long, slender legs that seemed to glow in the dim light. She wasn't wearing anything underneath. Her hair was still dripping, and her face was flushed from the steam. Her eyes were hazy veiled. She looked nothing like the woman who commanded boardrooms, armed to the teeth with confidence and couture. This version of her was pure, deadly temptation. My throat went dry. I tore my gaze away, unable to look at her. The hairdryer is in the drawer, I said, pointing to the nightstand. She hummed, walking over and bending down to search for it. The movement caused the loose collar of the t-shirt to dip forward. For a split second, my eyes caught a glimpse of a breathtaking expanse of white skin and the deep, shadowy valley between her breasts. I shot to my feet. You, dry your hair. I'm going to check on things downstairs. I practically fled the room. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of ice water and chugged it. It did nothing to extinguish the fire in my gut. I leaned against a bookshelf and let out a bitter laugh. Miller, you are pathetic. 3 years of self-control, gone in an instant. Was I really thinking about taking advantage of her like this? I was disgusted with myself. But the image of her, those legs, that skin, those eyes, was seared into my brain. I waited downstairs for a long time, until I was absolutely certain I had cooled down before I went back up. She was already in bed, curled into a tight ball, like an injured kitten. The duvet was pulled up to her chin, leaving only her small, pale face visible. She seemed to be asleep, her breathing light and even. I walked over to turn off the lamp and noticed the tear tracks still glistening on her cheeks. Even in sleep, her long lashes trembled. My heart ached again. I reached out, my fingers hovering just above her skin, wanting to wipe the tears away. I stopped myself. In the end, I just quietly turned off the light, closed the door, and retreated. That night, I slept on the sofa downstairs. I didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, I woke to the smell of something cooking. I opened my eyes and saw Catherine standing in the small kitchenette. She was still in my white t-shirt, with one of my aprons tied around her waist. Her long hair was casually pinned up, revealing the elegant, pale nape of her neck. Morning light streamed through the window, bathing her in a soft, ethereal glow. She was making fried eggs. Her movements were clumsy, almost frantic. The eggs were already burnt on one side, but she was concentrating with an intensity she usually reserved for multi-billion-dollar mergers. I watched her mesmerized. The scene felt so surreal, like something out of a dream. She heard me stir and turn around. When she saw I was awake, a bashful smile touched her lips. I was trying to make breakfast. I think I messed it up. The smile was shy and a little awkward, but it was more real and vibrant than any expression I had ever seen from her. In that instant, I felt my heart skip a beat. It's fine. I'll take over. I walked over and gently took the spatula from her hand. We were standing close. So close I could smell the familiar scent of my own shower gel on her skin, mixed with the faint, clean fragrance of her shampoo. Her cheeks flushed a delicate pink, and she instinctively took a step back. The air between us crackled with a strange new energy. I quickly made breakfast, 2 simple sandwiches and 2 glasses of warm milk. We sat across from each other, eating in silence. She ate slowly, delicately, a world away from the ruthless executive I remembered. You. We both spoke at once, then stopped. We looked at each other and smiled. You first, I said. She put down her sandwich and looked at me, her gaze direct. Ethan, can I stay here for a while? Her eyes were filled with uncertainty, with a silent plea. I don't have any other family. I don't have any friends. I don't know where else to go. I'll find a way to pay you rent, she added, a hint of her old pride in her tone. You can stay. The words were out of my mouth before I could even think. And don't worry about rent. Just consider it. Interest on that $500,000 you paid me for emotional distress. I joked, trying to lighten the mood. She blinked, then a slow, beautiful smile spread across her face. It was faint, but it was enough to light up the entire room. Okay. From that day on, Catherine lived in my bookstore. She was quiet. Most of the time, she'd just sit on the sofa in the corner, a book in her hands for hours on end. She stopped wearing her designer armor, trading it for the simple cotton t-shirts and jeans I'd bought for her. With a bare face, she was more beautiful than I had ever seen her. She started helping me clean, organizing the shelves. She learned how to make coffee, though she consistently butchered the steamed milk at first. She was a quick and diligent student, applying the same focus to the espresso machine that she once applied to her empire. I'd watch her clumsily wiping the windows or studying the coffee grinder with intense concentration, and a strange feeling would wash over me. This queen, once perched atop the world, was trying so hard to adapt to a new, ordinary life. And in this new world, I was her only anchor. The feeling was intoxicating. It was the feeling of being needed. One afternoon, the shop was empty. I was behind the counter, going over the accounts. She walked over with a cup of coffee and placed it in front of me. I made it, she said softly, her face full of anticipation. I took a sip. It was rich, smooth, perfect. It's delicious, I said, and I meant it. She smiled, her eyes crinkling into two beautiful crescents. Then, can I be in charge of the coffee from now on? As payment for rent. I looked into her shining eyes and nodded. Deal. In that moment, the afternoon sun streamed through the window, and her smile was brighter than the light itself. 6 days slipped by, calm and peaceful. Catherine seemed to be slowly emerging from the shadows of her past. She started talking more, and a genuine smile was no longer a rare sight. She became an excellent barista. Many customers came specifically for the coffee she made. They started calling her the beautiful proprietress of the reading hours. Every time she heard that, a blush would creep up her neck, and she'd steal a quick glance at me. Our relationship was changing, evolving in the quiet rhythm of our shared days. We were no longer employer and employee. We were more like family, or something even closer. Physical contact became more frequent, more natural. A casual brush of shoulders as we passed in a narrow space behind the counter would send a jolt through me. I could feel the softness and warmth of her body. She would reach out to straighten my collar, her fingertips grazing my neck and leaving a trail of fire in their wake. When I taught her how to cover new books in protective plastic, I would stand behind her, my hands covering hers to guide her. Her hands were so small and soft, a perfect fit in mine. I could smell the clean scent of her hair, feel her warm breath on my ear. Her body would stiffen slightly, and the tips of her ears would turn a lovely shade of pink. But she never pulled away. We were both caught in this unspoken dance, this sweet, simmering intimacy. One evening, after we'd finished inventory, I stretched, my shoulders aching from the long day. Let me, Catherine said suddenly. I froze. Before I could respond, she had moved behind me, and her small, soft hands were on my shoulders. Her fingers were slender, but surprisingly strong. She began to knead the tense muscles, her technique clumsy, but effective. The soreness immediately began to ease. You used to do this, she said softly from behind me. Whenever I worked late, you'd give me a massage. I was surprised. I thought she never paid attention to such small things. Back then, you'd always complain while you were doing it. Said my shoulders were hard as rocks. Her voice was laced with a hint of a smile. You also said, capitalists were heartless robots. I coughed, a little embarrassed. I was just kidding. I know, she laughed softly. I know you were just trying to make me laugh. Her hands slid from my shoulders down my back. Through the thin cotton of my t-shirt, I could feel the distinct warmth of her palms. It was like a current flowing straight to my heart. My body tensed involuntarily. Ethan, her voice changed. It was laced with hesitation and something else. Something sultry. She leaned in close, her warm breath caressing my ear. Do you have feelings for me? Boom. My brain shut down. All I could hear was the frantic, thunderous beating of my own heart. How was I supposed to answer that? Yes? No. I remained frozen, unable to move or speak. Behind me, she said nothing more, but her soft hands remained on my back. The air was thick with tension, with unspoken words. After what felt like an eternity, she slowly removed her hands. It's late. You should get some rest. With that, she turned and walked upstairs, her retreat looking almost panicked. I watched her go, my mind a swirling mess of emotions. Did I just blow it? That night, sleep eluded me once again. Her question echoed in my mind, over and over. Do you have feelings for me? It was accompanied by the phantom sensation of her warm breath and soft touch. 7 after that night, the atmosphere between us grew even more charged. We both tacitly agreed never to speak of her question again, but something had irrevocably shifted. The air was constantly humming with a delicate, unspoken tenderness. A shared glance across the room was enough to send my heart into a frenzy. I wasn't myself anymore. I found myself ridiculously happy for an entire day because of a single smile from her. I'd get inexplicably jealous when she chatted for a little too long with a male customer. I started to resent every person who got a taste of coffee she made, every stranger who was gifted one of her gentle smiles. I had to face it. I was falling hard for the one woman I swore I would never feel anything for. Then, one afternoon, an unwelcome visitor arrived. A man in an expensive suit, his hair slicked back with too much product, strode in carrying a ridiculously large bouquet of red roses. He made a beeline for the counter. "Catherine," he said, his voice so oily it made my skin crawl. The moment she saw him, Catherine's face changed. It was a mask of pure disgust and alarm. "Trevor Van asked her, how did you find me?" Trevor. I remembered the name. Catherine's supposed fiancé. The man who had vanished the second her world came crashing down. "I've been looking everywhere for you, Catherine," Trevor said, his face a mask of faux concern. "The moment I heard about your family, I flew back from Europe. Don't you worry. Now that I'm here, everything will be all right." He reached out to take her hand. Catherine recoiled as if she'd been touched by a snake. "I don't know you," she said, her voice reverting to its old, icy chill. "Please leave. You're not welcome here." Trevor's expression soured. "Catherine, how can you say that? We're engaged. Have you forgotten what your father—" "My father is gone." Catherine cut him off, her voice trembling slightly. "And so is that engagement. Now get out." Immediately, she pointed a shaking finger at the door, her meaning unmistakable. Trevor's face darkened. He glanced at the few customers watching the drama unfold and lowered his voice. "Catherine, don't be ungrateful. Do you really think you're still the great sterling heiress? You're nothing now. Who else would want you?" He took a step closer, his eyes greedy and aggressive. "Come with me. I can give you your old life back. Otherwise—" He smirked, his gaze falling on me. "You plan on spending the rest of your life with this pretty boy in his pathetic little bookstore?" I've been standing by, watching with cold fury. That last line was the final straw. I stepped forward, placing myself between him and Catherine. "You heard the lady," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "She told you to get lost." Trevor looked me up and down, his eyes dripping with contempt. "And who the hell are you?" A kept man getting brave. He jabbed a finger in my chest. The next sound was a sickening, wet crack. "Art," he screamed, a high-pitched, pig-like squeal, clutching his hand. His finger was bent at an unnatural angle. I held his deformed finger, my face a blank mask. I really hate it when people point at me. I let go. He snatched his hand back as if he'd been electrocuted. You hit me," he stammered, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fear. "I'll do more than hit you," I said, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face as I advanced on him. "I'll throw you out." I grabbed the collar of his expensive suit and lifted him off the ground as if he were a sack of garbage. His struggles were useless. I dragged him to the door and, with a final heave, threw him out into the rain-soaked street. He landed in a heap, a pathetic mess of designer fabric and broken pride. The bouquet of roses scattered around him, their petals instantly crushed and muddied by the rain. I dusted off my hands and walked back inside. The remaining customers were staring at me with a newfound respect. I ignored them and went straight to Catherine. She was just staring at me, her expression a complex mix of shock, worry, and something else. A shimmering light I couldn't quite decipher. "It's over," I said, looking her directly in the eye. "I'm here. No one is ever going to hurt you again." Trevor's appearance was a stone tossed into the calm pond of our life. Even though I'd thrown him out, the incident clearly rattled Catherine. For the rest of the afternoon, she was on edge, repeatedly staring out the window, lost in thought. I knew she was worried he'd come back. That night, after we'd locked up, I found her still sitting at the counter, making no move to go upstairs. Her profile looked lonely under the dim light. I walked over and sat down beside her. "Still thinking about this afternoon?" She came back to herself, nodding, then shaking her head. "I just feel so useless," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I used to think I was strong, that I could handle anything. Now, I can't even protect myself. I'm just dragging you into my mess." Seeing her like this, blaming herself, felt like a punch to the gut. "This isn't a mess," I said, reaching out and taking her cold hand in mine. She flinched but didn't pull away. "Catherine, listen to me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "Protecting you is something I want to do. It has nothing to do with whether you're the sterling heiress or if you have a dime to your name. I can't stand seeing you get hurt." Her eyes reddened, and a film of moisture welled up. "Ethan," she murmured, her lips trembling. Why are you so good to me?" There was again that question, but this time I wasn't going to run from it. "Because I'm in love with you." I said the words clearly, deliberately, finally giving voice to the truth I'd been fighting for so long. Not because of a contract, not out of a sense of duty. Just me, Ethan, being in love with you, Catherine. I don't know when it started. Maybe it was the first time you let me see you cry. Maybe it was when you stood in my kitchen, wearing my t-shirt, trying so hard to make me breakfast. Or maybe it was the night you stood behind me and asked if I had feelings for you. All I know is by the time I realized it, my world had already begun to revolve around you. I spoke slowly, seriously, laying my heart bare for her to see. Catherine just listened silent. Tears finally escaped, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. But through the tears, her lips were curving into a smile. She was crying and smiling at the same time. You idiot, she choked out. Why? Didn't you say so sooner? Seeing her like that, so beautifully vulnerable, I couldn't hold back any longer. I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. I could see the individual teardrops clinging to her long lashes, smell the faint, sweet scent of her breath. I paused, my lips just a breath away from hers. I could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. Can I kiss you? I asked, my voice hoarse. She didn't answer with words. She just closed her eyes and tilted her head up ever so slightly. It was the only invitation I needed. I closed the final gap and pressed my lips to hers. It was a soft, tentative kiss like a feather brushing against my soul. Her lips were even softer, even sweeter than I had imagined, with the faint saltiness of her tears and that unique, cool fragrance that was all her. I felt her body tense, her lashes flutter against my cheek. I didn't push, just gently, tenderly, savored the moment, as if I were handling a priceless treasure. Slowly, her body relaxed into mine. She responded, her movements clumsy and shy. She raised her hands and wrapped them around my neck. That simple gesture was a lit match to gasoline. All my carefully constructed control went up in flames. I was no longer content with a gentle touch. I deepened the kiss, my tongue seeking hers, staking my claim. I felt her momentary panic, but she didn't push me away. Instead, she held me tighter, surrendering herself to me completely, without reservation. Our breath mingled, our hearts beat in a frantic, shared rhythm. The kiss went on for a long, long time, until we were both breathless and dizzy. When we finally broke apart, we were both flushed, gasping for air. A thin, glistening strand of saliva connected our lips, a testament to the raw intimacy of the moment. Catherine buried her face in my chest, clinging to me like a kitten seeking shelter. I could feel the heat of her cheeks and the wild hammering of her heart against my ribs. Ethan, her voice was muffled against my shirt. Yeah, I whispered, holding her close, stroking her long, silky hair. What are we now? She asked in a small voice. I smiled, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. What do you think we are? She snuggled deeper into my embrace. Then, in a voice no louder than a mosquito's buzz, she said, from now on, you're not allowed to make me mad anymore. And you can't. Call me Ms. Sterling. I laughed a real happy laugh. Okay. Whatever you say, Catherine. I loved the way her name felt on my tongue. Catherine. My Catherine. In that moment, I felt like I had the entire world. The $3 million, the fancy condo, the sports car, they were all worthless compared to the warm, soft woman in my arms who cried for me and smiled for me. I held her, not wanting to ever let go. Outside, the rain had stopped. The moon pushed through the clouds, bathing us in a soft, gentle light. It all felt as beautiful and fragile as a dream. And if it was a dream, I never wanted to wake up. The final wall between us had crumbled. Our relationship was official. I was her boyfriend, and she was the proprietress. No, the owner of my bookstore. She insisted on having a 50% stake, offering herself as collateral. It was the most profitable deal I'd ever made. We started living like any other couple, except for one small detail. We still slept in separate rooms. I was on the sofa downstairs, she was in the loft. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was that I was afraid to. I was afraid I'd lose control and devour this precious, innocent rabbit. She said we should wait for the right moment. I didn't know when that moment would be, but for her, I was willing to wait forever. Our sweet, idyllic life didn't last long. One morning, about a week later, I woke up to find her gone. The bed in the loft was neatly made. On the counter downstairs sat a sandwich she'd prepared and a glass of still warm milk. Next to it was a note. "Ethan, wait for me." It was her handwriting, elegant, with a sharp, decisive edge. A cold dread seeped into my heart. I grabbed my phone to call her, only to see her phone sitting right there, next to the note. She'd left it behind. Where did she go? Why would she leave without a word? I was a nervous wreck all day, unable to focus on the store. I read her note over and over. "Wait for me." The 4 words were a cryptic puzzle. That afternoon, a breaking news banner flashed across the bottom of the financial news channel playing on the shop's small TV. Sterling Enterprises holds emergency board meeting. Announces major leadership shake-up. Catherine Sterling, daughter of late founder, reinstated as CEO. Sources report Sterling has returned with significant overseas capital and has successfully executed a hostile takeover of primary competitor, Van Aster International. On the screen, Catherine stood at a podium, bathed in a flash of cameras. She was wearing a sharp, black power suit. The icy, untouchable queen was back. Her gaze was sharp, her expression impassive. The shy, blushing girl who had hidden in my arms felt like a fever dream. Standing beside her were several powerful-looking people I didn't recognize, and being dragged away by security, his face pale and contorted in a mad rage, was her ex-fiancé, Trevor Van Aster. "Catherine, you vicious bitch, you'll burn for this," he screamed before being hauled out of the room. I stared at the screen, my mind a complete blank. So that was the truth. The bankruptcy, the desperation, losing everything. It was all a lie. An act. Was she just using me? Using my bookstore as a hideout while she plotted her comeback? Using my pity to get her through a rough patch? And now that she'd won, now that she was queen of the world again, she'd just tossed me aside without a second thought. My heart felt like it was being sawed in half by a dull blade. The pain was so intense, I couldn't breathe. I was a fool, the biggest fool in the world. To think that she could ever love someone like me, someone with nothing. To think that what we had was real. What a joke. I turned off the TV and locked the door to the shop. I sat alone in the darkness, clutching the note. I squeezed it until it was a crumpled, pathetic ball of paper. "Catherine Sterling, you play me perfectly. I never want to see you again." I pulled out my phone and booked the first flight out the next morning to anywhere. I chose Portland. I wanted to go somewhere I could disappear. This city, full of lies and betrayal, was poison. I couldn't stand another second here. The reading hours. To hell with it. There were no more reading hours in my life. Only an endless, starless night. The Oregon sky was a constant, moody gray, the air perpetually damp. It felt pure in its melancholy, a stark contrast to the glittering lies of New York. I rented a small cabin on the coast and watched the relentless waves crash against the rocks. I thought the raw power of the ocean could wash her from my memory. It didn't work. She was a ghost that haunted my every waking moment. During the day, I saw her in the swirling fog. At night, I saw her face when I closed my eyes. The more I tried to forget, the clearer the images became. Catherine, my t-shirt, burning eggs. Catherine in my arms, her heart racing as she asked what we were. Catherine, her eyes closed, tilting her head up for my kiss. Scene after scene played on a loop in my head, a movie of love and hate that was driving me insane. I left Oregon and just drove, from a misty coastline to the stark deserts of Arizona, from the mountains of Colorado to the plains of the Midwest. I saw a lot of America. I met a lot of people, but my heart remained a hollow, aching void. I was a ghost, wandering without a home. After 6 months, I found myself back in New York. I don't know why I came back. Maybe I just needed to finally close this chapter of my life. I went back to the bookstore. The reading hours was still there. The little bell over the door tinkled in the breeze. Nothing had changed. I pushed open the door. A familiar figure was sitting behind the counter. It was Catherine. She was thinner and looked exhausted. But her belly was gently, unmistakably swollen. She was wearing a loose maternity dress, her head bowed as she focused on a book. At the sound of the bell, she looked up. The moment her eyes met mine, her whole body jolted. The book fell from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Her eyes instantly flooded with tears. "You're back," she whispered, her voice raw and trembling. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her swollen stomach. My heart felt like it was being pierced by 1,000 tiny needles. "Whose is it?" I heard myself ask, my voice as cold and hard as iron. She didn't answer my question. She just stood up and walked toward me, one slow step at a time. Her eyes were red, tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, please let me explain. It's not what you think." "Explain." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "What's left to explain is, Sterling, that was quite a game of chess you played. Must have been very satisfying, watching the pawn fall for the queen. And now you're pregnant. Is it Trevor's? Congratulations. 2 birds, 1 stone." My words were knives, and I hurled them at her with all my might. I saw them land, saw her face drain of all color. Her body swayed. "No, it's not Trevor's," she sobbed, shaking her head frantically. "The baby is yours. Ethan, this is our baby." My brain buzzed, then shut down completely. "Ours, Howie. We never." My mind flashed back to our last night together. The night of the kiss, the confession. The night that was so full of hope and raw emotion. I'd had some whiskey that night. The details afterwards were hazy. I remembered waking up the next morning on the sofa, feeling sore and exhausted. I'd chalked it up to a vivid, whiskey-fueled dream. Could it be? "You remember, don't you?" she asked, her eyes a mix of pain and desperate love. "That night, you were drunk. You held me and wouldn't let go. You kept saying my name over and over. You were all over me. I didn't stop you. I couldn't. Because I love you, Ethan. I'm so in love with you. I thought it was a new beginning for us. But I was wrong." Her tears flowed harder now. Trevor wasn't my fiancé. He was my enemy. He engineered the hostile takeover that ruined my father and drove him to his death. I had to pretend to be broken, to be weak. Approaching you. At first, it was a cover, a way to hide while I gather my allies. But then I fell in love with you. For real. I had to go back. I had to take back what was mine and get justice for my father. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't drag you into it. Trevor is a monster. He would have hurt you. So I had to leave without saying goodbye. I was afraid if I saw you, I'd never be able to leave. As soon as it was over, I came back for you. But you were gone. "Ethan, I've been looking for you for 6 months. I looked everywhere." She was sobbing so hard she could barely stand. I remained rooted to the spot, a stone statue. The information was too much. Enemy, revenge, our child. It was all some kind of insane melodramatic movie. And I was the clueless, heartbroken idiot of a leading man. In the end, I didn't leave. I stayed. Not because I completely believed her story, but because I couldn't turn my back on a pregnant woman. A woman who might be carrying my child. Our life resumed. But it was a broken reflection of what had been. An invisible wall stood between us now. On my side was the sting of betrayal and a mountain of hurt. On her side was a campaign of cautious, gentle atonement. She handed over the day-to-day operations of Sterling Enterprises to a team of managers and dedicated herself to the bookstore and her pregnancy. She cooked my favorite meals. She remembered every little habit and preference I had. When I was tired, she would quietly massage my shoulders. The more she did, the more the wall inside me began to crumble. I could see it in her eyes. She really did love me. It was a deep, humbling kind of love, completely at odds with the powerful queen she had once been. Sometimes I wondered if she had just told me the truth from the start, would things have been different? But life doesn't have do-overs. The baby grew. Her belly swelled, a constant, living reminder of what connected us. I started going with her to the prenatal appointments. The day I saw the tiny, flickering shape on the ultrasound monitor and heard the strong, steady thrum of a tiny heart, my own heart melted completely. The wall shattered into a million pieces. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I loved her. I had loved her all along. My anger, my pride, I had just been fighting with myself. On the drive back from the hospital, the silence in the car was thick but no longer hostile. As we neared the bookstore, I broke it. "Catherine," she started, turning to look at me. Let's start over," I said. Her eyes lit up, shining like stars igniting in the night sky. She didn't speak. She just nodded, her whole body shaking with silent, happy tears. I took one hand off the wheel and found hers. It was still just as soft. I squeezed it tightly, as if I could reclaim all the time we had lost in that one gesture. Life finally found its proper rhythm again. A rhythm of sunshine, the smell of coffee, and the warmth of the woman I loved. A few months later, Catherine gave birth to a son. He was healthy, perfect, and beautiful. He had her eyes but my nose and mouth. We named him Asher. She held him in her arms, her face glowing with a happiness so pure it took my breath away. I smiled. A wife, a son, a home. My life had never felt so complete. As for the betrayal and the pain of the past, I let it go. Life was too short. The only thing that mattered was the person right in front of me. I walked over and wrapped my arms around both of them, kissing her on the cheek. "You did so good, my love." She leaned back into my embrace, nuzzling against my shoulder. "It was worth it," she whispered. "For you and Asher, everything was worth it." Outside the window of the reading hours, the sun shone brightly. The days were quiet and good. I knew our story was really just beginning. And this time, it was going to be a long, long, happy one.